midway through Kyle Sinckler's impressive self-analysis of how he has developed from a precocious young prop into an experienced international and more rounded individual on the eve of his second World Cup, when he briefly seems to forget just how quickly the years are flying by. After a summer holiday spent in the West Country, where walks to Glastonbury tour were a regular occurrence, Sinckler is ready to make amends for the 2019 heartbreak he felt in Japan. Away from the pitch, Sinckler's holistic approach is unusual in the rugby world. He works with a men's mentoring organization focusing on mind and soul, and owns a crystal which he believes removes negative energy. He also burns sage, aiming for the same result. Before joining England's World Cup training camps, he shunned fancy trips to Ibiza or Mykonos to stay at home. "I go up to Glastonbury tour and do a bit of breathing and meditation," Sinckler tells Mail Sport. "It gives me clarity and energy to start my day. I like to spend time in nature and walk the dogs. I'm quite an extroverted guy in the presence of others, but I'm actually quite an introvert. I like my own space. I get a lot of peace and fulfillment just by following my pattern. That might be having a nap or reading a book. The plan is to have a great World Cup with England. I can rest on a beach after that." Sinckler's front row dynamism helped England to the World Cup final in 2019, but his appearance in rugby's biggest game lasted just a matter of minutes. He was knocked out and forced off early on in the defeat by South Africa after suffering a sickening clash of heads with teammate Maro Itoje. Without Sinckler, England's scrum was obliterated by the Springboks. "The 2019 World Cup was a great experience for me," Sinckler adds. "It was a perfect storm, but getting knocked out after 2 minutes wasn't great. In the 4 or 5 week span I had to myself this summer, that World Cup final moment definitely came up. In moments where I have felt sorry for myself, I've reminded myself of that incident and how it was taken out of my hands. It wasn't pleasant. You can look at those situations with a victim mentality, but it comes to a point where you have to use it as motivation, which is something I've tried to do." Sinckler's personal development both on and off the field can only be good news for England and their head coach Steve Borthwick, with another World Cup on the horizon. The Bristol Tighthead is now entering what should be his peak years as a front row forward, with 61 caps and 2 Lions tours on his CV. "As I sit here and talk to you now at 30, which is crazy by the way, I'd say I'm probably a totally different person from 4 years ago," Sinckler says. "When I was younger, I had a lot of anger and frustration inside me. I always wanted to be the black sheep and do things my way. I just wanted to prove everyone wrong. No one ever doubted my rugby ability, it was more my temperament, and it felt like the whole world was against me. I was probably very emotional. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but with age and experience comes perspective, and I'd say as a player, my consistency is definitely a lot better now. I feel like I have the elements of my old self in terms of hunger and passion to want to be the best, but now also a better perspective on what I need to do as a player and person." Sinckler, who is working with supplement brand Bioglin to improve his physical and mental health, continues, "At the start of my career, there definitely was no balance. I was solely focused on rugby, but I just wanted to prove people wrong. I could do a flash moment like a good pass, a good run, or a big hit. But my consistency wasn't there. Life is about balance. Rugby still is and always will be no one, but now I'm more in tune with what I need off the field." England are outsiders to reach a second consecutive final given their struggles since 2019, which culminated with the sacking of Eddie Jones and appointment of Borthwick. Apostrophe. "To be an England player who has an opportunity to go into what would be a second World Cup means I'm very grateful to be in that position," Sinckler says. "Especially in the current climate of English rugby. You have to make the most of that." Sinckler watched from afar last season as Premiership sides Worcester, Wasps and London Irish all dropped out of existence following financial woe. "It's crazy. It's revealing how fragile our current climate is," Sinckler says, drawing comparisons between the landscapes of English rugby and the country's politics. "If you look at the crisis with the economy, the lack of food and the cost of living, it's not great. One thing I do know is that whatever we are doing, it isn't working. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again expecting different results. It will be sad if in 10 to 15 years professional rugby doesn't exist in England. Thousands of kids rock up to rugby clubs on a Sunday with the dream of playing for England. Apostrophe. For that to possibly not be viable in however many years is a scary thought. Some say things have to break to rise again into something great. Hopefully that's the case." Sinckler's focus is now narrowing to England's World Cup warm-ups, which start away to Wales on August 5. Cardiff was the scene of one of Sinckler's most miserable days when, in 2019, he imploded as England failed to stop a Welsh Grand Slam. He exorcised those demons with a try-in victory at Principality Stadium in this year's Six Nations. Sinckler is now a very different person and player. Hopefully we can surprise a few people at the World Cup, he concludes. If you look at our team on paper, why not? It's easy to say that, but actually doing it is a totally different story. It's time for us to let the rugby do the talking.